Hey, what's going on, everybody? Miles Burghoff here, Z-Man Pro, and today we're going to go out on Lake Chickamauga and we're going to talk about chatterbait fishing. So chatterbaits are probably my favorite category of lure, and really we need to call it a lure system because there's a lot more than just the chatterbait itself. And what I want to do today, because I've had so much success with chatterbaits and the chatterbait system and have made a lot of money over the years using it and caught a lot of fish, I'm going to give you 9 of my best tips to make you a better chatterbait angler. So let's get right to it. Let's hop in the boat, have some fun. All right, guys, so for this first tip, we have to talk about color selection, because one of the beautiful things about the chatterbait system, and we call it a system because you not only have the chatterbait, but you got a huge variety of different trailers to go with your chatterbaits. And one of the beautiful things is that you can mix and match the different colors of your chatterbait and your trailers to accomplish a wide variety of different things. So for shad and bluegill, my general rule is I like to have a very consistent color profile. So like, for instance, this right here, we've got the brand new ChatterSpike in chartreuse and white with the new ChatterBait Elite EVO in chartreuse and white. And when I've got a consistent color profile, I really think that works well with shad imitations and bluegill, because those species, though they have a lot of different colors going on, usually they're very, very consistent in their coloration. However, when it comes to imitating crawfish, a lot of crawfish species are going to have very contrasting color combinations. So for instance, here in the South, during the early spring, you're going to see a lot of crawfish turn a bright reddish orange, but they're still going to have some greens and browns in there too, oftentimes. And so one of my favorite color combinations to do is something completely different than what you would see with shad or bluegill. Is I like to do a fire craw colored chatterbait matched with a green pumpkin trailer. And even though it looks pretty crazy, it looks pretty out there, it matches the forage species very, very well in some of these southern fisheries. So sometimes it pays off to be consistent as far as your color selection, and sometimes it really pays off to do something completely different. All right, so we already talked about the different color combinations that you can achieve with the chatterbait system. Now let's talk about the different trailer profiles that really affect the way that you fish a chatterbait. So really, I kind of break it down into 2 different categories. The first category of trailers that are available on the market, and Z-Man has really done a great job of offering several different options in this category, is kind of the more streamlined profile. So you can see here, this is the new ChatterSpike. It's segmented, but it doesn't have any appendages on the back that create drag or create any action on its own. It's just very streamlined, and it's reliant on the movement of the chatterbait to create action. It's got a very subtle swimming action that's very realistic. I like these streamlined trailers like the ChatterSpike and the Razor Shads when I'm trying to have a bait that has less drag. And what less drag does is, number one, it allows you to fish these baits a little bit deeper. So for deep water situations, or where I'm trying to get that bait just a little bit deeper, these type of trailers work really well. And also, if I'm yo-yoing a chatterbait, you know, ripping it off the bottom, let it fall down, I want it to have a little bit of a glide. And when you don't have a lot of resistance on the tail, it doesn't just fall straight down. It actually has a little bit of a glide on the fall. And I really like that, that action when yo-yoing a bait. So these streamlined trailers like the ChatterSpike work great for that situation. But also clear and cold water conditions, that's when these are going to really excel, because they have a very subtle action to them. But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the more action trailers. Okay, like this right here. This is the DieZel MinnowZ. Some other good options are like the Turbo Craws or the Goat. All of those work really, really well on the back of a chatterbait, but they do something different. As you can see, you've got this appendage back here, this little paddle tail. It creates action, it creates vibration, and it also creates a little bit of drag. And so these trailers are better suited for warm water, dirtier water, and situations where you're fishing shallower water overall. And so, you know, I generally will fish these kind of post spawn through the summer and into, you know, early fall. and especially when I'm trying to fish shallow water, especially around grass or docks or something like that. So overall, be very aware of the conditions that you're faced with and match your trailer to your chatterbait accordingly. All right, guys, so for this next tip, let's talk about not only fishing a chatterbait for bass, which we already know is great, but also for a variety of different sport fish out there. You know, I've gone up north and caught a ton of different toothy critters, such as muskie or northern pike up there, and then came down south to fish for big bull reds with chatterbaits. And they all love the action, the vibration, and the movement of a chatterbait. And one of the things that I like to do with you know, toothy critters up north, or anytime you're fishing for a sport fish that has a lot of teeth, is I like to save my old chatterbaits that the skirts have fallen off over the years, and usually they've fallen off because of a toothy critter. And I don't throw these away, I save them because they are great for fishing for those toothy critters. And then also, when you're fishing for bigger fish, like I've fished down in Venice, Louisiana a lot for big bull reds, it's really important to make sure that you have a chatterbait that can handle those big, hard fighting sport fish. And so this right here is the iStrike chatterbait. This is a bait that I've caught a lot of bull reds on, and it's got a very strong hook. It's got a extremely durable line tie, and so it is designed specifically for bigger fish. And so make sure that you choose the right chatterbait for the fish that you're trying to catch. So overall, don't throw away your old chatterbaits for those toothy critters, and make sure that you use a beefier chatterbait for those big species. All right, guys, so I really don't want to talk about this next tip because it's something I've been keeping on the down low for a while, but we need to talk about going deep with your chatterbaits, because most people, when they think of a chatterbait, they think of a great shallow water power fishing tactic, and they're right, but it's also a really versatile deep water tactic too, especially when you look at like the JackHammer line. It comes in a 3/4 and 1.25 ounce sizes for some of the different colors, and that allows you to get really deep very quickly. So one of the things that I like to do is really I've caught fish out to 40 foot of water on a chatterbait, and what I'll do is I'll cast it out, let it hit the bottom, and then I'll experiment with the retrieve a little bit. I'll either straight retrieve it, just slow roll it back to the boat, or I'll have more of a yo-yo technique. And really that depends on the mood of the fish at that particular moment. And if you have forward-facing sonar, it makes it easier for you to be able to see how they're reacting to the bait, and you can make those changes accordingly. Another thing that you need to pay attention to for fishing a chatterbait deep is your trailer. You want a more streamlined trailer without a lot of drag. So I like a razor ShadZ or a ChatterSpike, so you can maintain a certain depth range and not have this bait want to pull up to the surface like a chatterbait generally likes to do. So overall, chatterbait is great shallow, but don't forget about it for deep water. All right, guys, so let's talk about the tackle that you need for fishing a chatterbait. And this is something that I've honed over the years. I've tried a lot of different combinations of rods, reels, and lines. And this right here works perfectly. So I've settled on a 7.3 medium heavy graphite rod. A lot of guys like composite rods. They use the same rods that they use for crankbaits. I don't like composite rods. They're a little bit too parabolic, a little bit slower action, and overall I feel like I lose sensitivity in my ability to lead big fish away from cover. So that's why I like to use a 7.3 medium heavy graphite rod, because I can take control of a fight, lead those fish away from the cover because it has a good solid backbone, and it also allows me to have more sensitivity, know what that chatterbait's doing, and be able to rip that chatterbait free of any grass or anything that gets hung on it. But a medium heavy also has a little bit of a soft tip on it that allows you to make good, accurate, and long casts as well. So it's a perfect combination. As far as the reel that I like to use bait casting gear, and I like something in the middle of the road gear ratio range. So something like 7:2 to 1 is what I like to use. Something in the 5 or 6 gear ratio range seems to be a little slow, doesn't allow me to catch up with those fish when they strike it from behind, which is very common with a chatterbait bite. And a faster gear ratio, like an 8.1 to 1, I find myself forcing myself to slow down the retrieve all the time. So I like something right in the middle. And as far as the line that I spool on there, it's 100% fluorocarbon 100% of the time. I like 17 or 20 pound tests for most of my chatterbait fishing up shallow. But if I'm fishing deeper, you want something that has a smaller diameter. So 12 or 15 pound seems to be perfect for that. But you don't have to go light with your tackle. Chatterbaits are all about power fishing and catching big bass. All right, so for this next tip, let's talk about fishing a chatterbait around grass. It's one of the best reaction baits of all time for fishing around submergent grass, such as hydrilla or milfoil like we have on this flat here. And the reason why it's so good is because it can shake itself free of that grass, and it just does not foul that much. But a lot of people even still like to avoid you know, getting their bait in the grass, which is a mistake. So what I like to do instead is I like to reel just fast enough to where I start feeling that grass. And then when I make contact with it, I rip the rod tip to, number one, free the chatterbait from that grass that's fouling the hook. But number two, because it creates a erratic hunting action that triggers way more strikes. So when you're fishing around grass, always make sure that you're making contact with that grass and ripping it free, which triggers more strikes. All right, so we've already talked about fishing a chatterbait around grass and how it's really important to get that reaction strike. Oh, there's a bass right there. Get a reaction strike by getting that bait in that grass and ripping it free. Let's get this one in the boat. All right, so there we go. Nice bass fishing around the grass. But what if we're not fishing around grass? Put him back. What if we're not fishing around the grass and we can't make that ripping motion because we're not making contact with the grass? Well, it's still important to get an erratic movement and hunting action out of your chatterbait. So if you're fishing open water, one thing I like to do is I like to have some sort of variation of 2 different techniques. So I might cast it out and pop the rod tip occasionally like this during the retrieve. Or another way to create that erratic action, and it's better for colder water and, you know, like wintertime, early spring, that sort of thing, is I'll just pause the reel. Okay, so I'll just pause the reel handle. And that's a less aggressive way to get an erratic action, but it's still a great way to get a reaction strike out of a bass that normally wouldn't eat that bait on just a straight retrieve. All right, so the next tip I got to give you guys is to burn your chatterbait. There are times where none of the other techniques we talked about, you know, yo-yoing or you know, the popping retrieve or the stop and go retrieve, none of those work as good as a good old straight burning retrieve. So where you cast it out and you just reel it really quick. And one thing that you'll notice right away is that the hunting action that is naturally in a lot of these chatterbaits is accentuated by the additional speed that you're retrieving that bait. It just tends to go side to side more. And that's one of the reasons why it is very effective. Another reason is that, you know, it's just coming by those fish so quick, they have to make a split-second decision. So when you're not getting bites with any other retrieve, try burning it, and that might just do it. All right, so the next tip I have for you guys is to stay in tune with what your chatterbait is doing, which the great thing about chatterbaits is the fact that it's not hard to know when it's actually running right or not, because the chatterbait has such an aggressive vibration to it that if it's not vibrating, you know something's up. And a lot of times if you're reeling along and it's vibrating fine, then all of a sudden, you know, it kind of just feels a little bit duller. A lot of times that just means that you have a little bit of grass or some type of snag on there that you've got to, you know, rip free, you know, free it from that snag. And a lot of times they'll just shake it right off. Another situation that you'll face with a chatterbait is when a fish hits a chatterbait, it'll come up behind it and push slack into that line, and it'll feel like you're reeling along, and then all of a sudden you lose complete connection with that chatterbait. There's no weight there at all. In that situation, you've got to start reeling real quick and then lean into that fish to set the hook. So it really pays to stay in tune with your chatterbait. All right, guys, so I know I said 9 tips, but I got a bonus for you. So this is number 10. This has to do with choosing a good quality chatterbait. One of the best qualities of a chatterbait like the JackHammer or the new ChatterBait Elite EVO is the fact that when you cast it out there for the very first time and you turn that reel handle, that blade starts going. It starts vibrating. And there's a lot of chatterbaits out there or imitations that just don't do that. You have to pop your rod tip or reel real fast to get them to go. And it's really important because a lot of times you're casting around visible cover and things like that. And you never know if there's a fish very close by to where you're casting. Usually you're casting in a location for a reason. So you don't want there to be any time where that bait's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so that's why it's super important to have a chatterbait that when it hits the water and you start reeling, it's working. All right, everybody, that does it for my 9, scratch that, make it 10 chatterbait tips that are gonna make you a better chatterbait angler. You know, overall, this is a category of baits that I have the utmost confidence in. I've caught countless fish on chatterbaits. I love fishing them. And the last bit of information, or the little nugget of a tip that I'm gonna give you, is to make chatterbait fishing your own. That's the beautiful thing about the chatterbait system, is it's so versatile. There's so many things you can do with it. No matter what style of fishing you like to do, chatterbaits can fit into that style. So make it your own, and that's going to help you catch more fish overall. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any need for any more information on chatterbaits, go to zmanfishing.com, check out Z-Man's YouTube channel, and also swing on by Sonar Fishing, my YouTube channel, because I do all kinds of videos on chatterbait fishing. So thank you guys for watching. I'm going to see you out on the water. Trust the process.